Hey everybody, welcome back to History Student Reacts. Today we'll be watching Sun Tzu and Establishment of Eastern Wu by Kings and Generals. So last time in Kings and Generals 3 Kingdom series, we saw the conflict between Cao Cao and Yuan Shao. And today we will be continuing this fascinating era of Chinese history, one that I don't know too much about, but I'm very excited to learn about. Now, if you would have liked to have seen this video, which was a recommendation by one of our fantastic patrons, and videos like this one early, then please check out the Patreon. It is linked down below, or become a channel member. You can also find that down below. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into this reaction.
In our previous video on the Three Kingdoms period, we covered the conflict on the northern frontier of ancient China between the great warlords Cao Cao and Yuan Shao, culminating in the decisive battle at Guandu in the year 200. Today, we shall move the spotlight from the northern lands and cast it upon the coastal southeast of China, where—
Ooh, okay, we'll be moving south. So last time, we dealt with the powerful warlords of northern China. Now we will be moving to a different region. Interesting stuff.
Another fascinating warlord, Sun Tzu, would instigate the rise of another of the Three Kingdoms of the 3rd century.
Sun Tzu.
This video is brought to you by Total War Three Kingdoms, a brand—
Alrighty, you guys know the deal. I'll have this video linked down below so you can check out Kings and Generals, leave a like on their video, subscribe to them, check out their sponsor, you know, all that good stuff. Show them support for making this fantastic content.
In the description. Born in the year 175 at Yandu, Sun Tzu was the eldest born son of Sun Jian, a general of the crumbling Han dynasty.
Right.
After the Yellow Turban Rebellion broke out in 184, Sun Jian was dispatched to assist in the war against the rebels. 6 years later, he was also a member of the assorted coalition of warlords who briefly united against the usurper General Dong Zhuo, the campaign that would pave the way for the period of territorial fragmentation that followed. During the conflict, Sun Jian had pledged his service and allegiance to another more prominent warlord, Yuan Shu. During this time, Sun Tzu met a member of this clan who was known as Zhou Yu, and the two became—
Oh my goodness, I'm just reminded of how much I have to learn about this era of Chinese history, and well, frankly, Chinese history as a whole, but just focusing on this, so many new names popping up that I'm completely unfamiliar with. We have coalitions and states and dynasties, you know, a lot of stuff that, like I said, I still need to learn about. I have a lot of historical gaps that I need to fill in with knowledge such as this.
Became inseparable friends. With the threat of Dong Zhuo now out of the way, Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu's forces began to jostle for influence and position. In this time, Sun Jian was sent by his patron to challenge an ally of—
You know you're in an era of warlords when you look at a map of the country, and we don't even have different states or provinces listed. The different regions are just identified by the warlord who rules over that legion, or that region, sorry. That really tells you something about this era.
Yuan Shao, Liu Biao. In a battle on the mountain slopes near the city of Xiangyang in 191, Sun Jian was killed by an arrow. Sun Tzu, who was just 16 years old, was now forced to take his father's place.
Damn.
At this point, Yuan Shu's fortunes seem to have begun a steep decline. He was forced to abandon his attempts to conquer territory in—
Now we do have some familiar names here. Good old Yuan Shao, Cao Cao, Sun Tzu is there at the moment, but it appears his story is going to diverge at some point from what we've already seen.
Liu Biao's heartland in Jing province. In 193, Yuan Shu's holdings were invaded from the north by Cao Cao and his armies. In a series of battles, Yuan Shu was defeated multiple times and was consequently driven southeast, while most of his domain in the fertile Yellow River region had been annexed. Despite this, he still controlled the largest army in the southeast of China, and his losses compelled him to regroup in the Huai Valley with a new base at Shouchun. The arrival of Yuan Shu and his command in Shouchun had brought an immediate change to Sun Ce's situation. Having likely leveraged his reputation as a promising youth and as the eldest son of Sun Jian, Sun Ce had begun to collect a small following of his own. This included a man named Lu Fan, a refugee from Runan who had brought 100 retainers to serve Sun Ce, and another man named Sun He, one of Sun Jian's former personal bodyguards and confidants. With this small...
Alright, I mean, look, in an era like this, we talked about an era of infighting and warlords, you need to sort of build your own cadre, your own personal court, gather men around you who are capable and loyal, first and foremost. I imagine in a time like this, loyalty is extremely important. You need those sorts of people around you. And especially if you have people who've joined you from early on and stick with you, that's a good sign.
Entourage, Sun Ce appeared before his father's former patron in Shouchun in early 194. After outlining his father's dedication to Yuan Shu, he offered his services to this lord. Yuan Shu was said to have been impressed and allocated the former followers of Sun Jian to Sun Ce.
Alright.
Despite his misfortunes in the previous years, Yuan Shu had begun to annex neighbouring commanderies as soon as he arrived in Shouchun. As he brought Danyang under his control, he sent Wu Bing and Sun Ben, relatives of Sun Ce, to the province as leading administrators. Yuan Shu then encouraged the rising young man to join his relatives in that region, probably as a means of getting the ambitious youth out of his way.
That's interesting. So, Sun Ce is sort of climbing his way up. Yuan Shu is enabling that. Maybe partially because Sun Ce is a promising young man. Maybe he can accomplish great things. But maybe he also wants them, like they said, out of his way. Perhaps he's a bit of a threat. Maybe a bit of a nuisance. Maybe it's better if we send him off somewhere else, so he can't directly interfere with whatever we have going on here. Of course, that's going to be a concern. That's why loyalty is so important, because if you have a promising, ambitious subordinate, well, that's great. I mean, they could accomplish great things for you. But they could just as easily break away and try to overshadow you. Perhaps even directly interfere with you. So you gotta use a bit of risk assessment here. Judge what is best for your particular cause.
For several months, Sun Ce stayed in Danyang, gradually increasing his number of followers and gaining crucial military experience in petty warfare against local enemies, barbarians and bandits.
Barbarians. We have the classic, and I always find this kind of amusing. China does this, Rome did this, the Persians did this. Any of these great empires that see themselves as the one and only great empire, they love calling other people's barbarians. Like I said, Rome loved to do this, China loved to do this. Just these great, impressive empires who really saw themselves as the center of the world, or at least the center of the civilized world. They looked around them, looked beyond their borders, and went, all of you must be barbarians. That's sort of a funny commonality to me.
After suffering a defeat at the hands of a local chieftain named Zhu Lang, Sun Ce travelled to see Yuan Shu again, who transferred a further 1,000 troops to serve under him. In addition, he was granted the flowery title of Colonel who cherishes righteousness.
Oh wow, very nice.
After conquering the treacherous commandery of a personal enemy, Liu Kang, in Yuan Shu's name, Sun Ce expected to be appointed to the post of Grand Administrator in that region, as he was promised. However, Yuan Shu broke that vow, and instead awarded the position to another subordinate, Liu Shun. It is likely that...
I think this is when it starts to get messy.
At this point, Sun Ce became disillusioned with his nominal patron. Nevertheless, in 195, the burgeoning commander was sent to fight against Liu Yao, a warlord in the south, who had been encroaching onto Yuan Shu's territory. He quickly crossed the Yangtze with 5,000 men and defeated a general named Jiang Ying at Dangli, before moving on a massive storage depot at Niuzhu where he plundered the supplies before proceeding to establish a camp. After a few subsequent indecisive skirmishes with Liu Yao's commanders, Sun Ce cleverly outmaneuvered them, and instead marched first on Moling to the north, modern Nanjing, and then on to Chua to the east, seizing both in a lightning campaign in early 196, and making the latter his new headquarters. In a politically savvy move, Sun Ce proclaimed that no reprisals would be taken against the soldiers who had fought for Liu Yao.
You know, it's interesting, he has been sent there to do a job by his nominal patron. Seems like he may have already been disillusioned, but I'm getting the impression, and maybe it's just due to the color on the map, it sort of gives it away a little bit, but I'm getting the impression that Sun Ce is starting to build his own personal base of power. I mean, he's already been doing that, but now perhaps he's doing it in a territorial sense, truly becoming more and more autonomous from his patron and building himself up.
Moreover, any deserter who wished to fight in his victorious army would be welcomed heartily. Within a few weeks, he had gained a stunning 20,000 footmen and over 1,000 cavalry. In recognition of this success, Yuan Shu granted Sun Ce the title of Acting General who Destroys Criminals.
Wow, these titles.
Despite the defeat of Liu Yao, many small factions in the hills and the countryside had used the fighting as an opportunity to re-establish themselves. Among them, a local tribal leader known as White Tiger Yan, and a former officer of Liu Yao, Tai Xie. In the second half of 196, Sun Ce attacked and defeated both of them, consolidating his rule over the region.
Yeah, consolidating his rule over the region. Pay close attention to that.
Back to the north, Yuan Shu made a fatal mistake in the summer of 197. He proclaimed himself emperor of a newly founded Zhong dynasty.
Come on, man.
Almost all combatants in this long civil war claimed to be fighting for the restoration of the Han dynasty.
Yeah, this is one of the big things we talked about last time, and this is something that we see in states during periods of chaos and civil war and, eras of warlords. We saw this during the Sengoku Jidai in Japan. There are a lot of different examples where you have all these different warlords, right? But oftentimes you will have some sort of royal puppet, an emperor or an emperor-like figure. It might differ depending on the situation. And all of these warlords, though in reality they're building their own states, their own empires, they all claim to be serving the legitimate emperor. And so to go out of your way, especially if you're not the number one guy, to go out of your way to declare a new dynasty, to leave the legitimacy, even the facade of legitimacy that came with the previous dynasty behind, and try to start your own thing, that's an extremely risky move, and what that does, basically, is give all of your enemies, in this case, all of your neighbors, an opportunity to attack you, because now you've put yourself out there.
So such a declaration was tantamount to becoming an outlaw, and it gave Sun Ce a justification to break all allegiance with him.
There you go.
Two great warlords in the north.
Yeah, already you got Cao Cao and Lu Bu moving in. Like, immediately after this pronouncement, Sun Ce is breaking off. A big mistake, in my opinion.
Cao Cao and Lu Bu now attacked Yuan Shu's territory and drove the warlord south of the Huai River, diminishing his holdings and his power greatly.
Yeah.
At this point, an imperial decree signed by Emperor Shan, who was under Cao Cao's influence, ordered Sun Ce to join the alliance against Yuan Shu. Meanwhile, another imperial...
And now look, that decree from the emperor, let's be honest, on its own, it means nothing. But you can interpret that as basically an order from Cao Cao. There is no real legitimate royal authority. There's only the authority of violence at this time. But that message still means something because it is basically coming from Cao Cao. And so Sun Tzu, well, he can decide what exactly he wants to do, but I would say this has opened up a pretty big opportunity for him.
Edict suspiciously appointed Chen Yu, an associate of Cao Cao, to administer the Wu commandery. Instead of cooperating with Sun Ce, Chen Yu began to plot with the White Tiger Yan and other various rebel groups in Sun Ce's territory to act as agents against him. When Sun Ce found out, he marched south and took a bloody toll on the White Tiger Yan. At the same time, he sent an army under General Lu Fan to annihilate the forces of Chen Yu, which he promptly did. Quickly realizing he was better off assisting the young man, Cao Cao had the emperor bestow upon Sun Ce the title of Marquis of Wu. Rather than weakening and restraining Sun Ce, Cao Cao's scheming had only confirmed him in all of his territorial.
Interesting. So Cao Cao was attempting to weaken him. But basically seeing that that didn't work, Cao Cao is now saying, alright, well, seems like you're here to stay. I will approve of this for now.
Acquisitions, the commanderies of Wu, Kuai-ji, and the eastern half of Danyang. Further seeking to expand his holdings, Sun Ce pushed west up the Yangtze and defeated and captured Zhu Lang and Liu Yao's old general Taishi Ci. At this point, it would have been understandable for the skilled and threatening figures to be executed, but Sun Ce showed his political acumen and instead gave them respect and mercy.
Interesting. Okay, first off, look at the rate of expansion, my goodness! Think back on where Sun Ce started. Well, first of all, he started as a subordinate to Yuan Shu. But think about the territory he gained initially and how much he has expanded that. And two, this man knows how to play politics. He knows when to be merciful, when to be harsh. He knows how to take enemies and turn them to his side. These are some very important skills. Of course, you need to know how to make war in a time like this, and he does. But you also need to understand the political game if you truly want to build up your base of support.
In the future, they would become some of Sun Ce's most capable officers. This proved to be a useful act when Liu Yao passed away in late 198. As Taishi Ci was his former subordinate, Sun Ce ordered him to venture west, perform reconnaissance on the late warlord's territories, and to persuade his former allies to come over to Sun Ce's side. He went off with a small party and returned a few weeks later, reporting that only anarchy, neglect, and division were present in the...
And you know, it's also, just to sort of explain some of the mindset, if you're able to offer mercy to your defeated enemies, first of all, that means you can get some new skilled subordinates on your side. But second of all, what that means is when you have a situation like this, right? You have a territory. The warlord in charge has just died. Now they're going to see you as a viable option because they can look back and go, well, Sun Tzu is very merciful. I mean, he's successful. When he defeats his enemies, he brings them in. Maybe he's a good option to turn to. And when you fight other battles, it'll be easier to turn those enemies to your side, to take over territory, because, you know, if you're some brutal, merciless monster, then people will be more likely to resist you, unless they're so afraid that they literally can't do that. But they'll be more likely, if you have shown mercy, to be willing to join your side, because they know that they won't be punished.
The current governance of the area. Consequently, Sun Ce decided that he would conquer Yujiang the following year. As Sun Ce's army prepared to again move west up the Yangtze River in early 199, the young leader discovered that Yuan Shu had finally passed away.
Oh wow.
Liu Shun, the man to whom Yuan Shu had granted Sun Ce's promised commandery, had inherited many of his troops and his court. Eager to gain revenge against this old rival, Sun Ce resorted to a clever trick of diplomacy.
Oh.
He pretended to be friendly with Liu Shun, and urged the new administrator to attack the wealthy city of Shangliao, which was outside of his province. Fooled by Sun Ce's friendliness, he did so, and an army under Sun Ben and Sun Fu subsequently cut Liu Xun's lines of communication.
So sneaky! Like I said, you need to know how to play the political game, and that is exactly what Sun Ce is doing. You can also see, in an era like this, where we have personal rule by warlords, a good chunk of this comes down to personal gripes and personal relationships. You know, this is not a detached, professionalized version of politics. This is extremely personal. There are few men in this situation who are very influential, and so their personal feelings and personal relationships actually play a really big role in the future of China.
Supply and retreat back to his own region. Meanwhile, Sun Ce himself commanded a force which advanced, besieged and seized Huan City, capital of the Lujiang Commandery.
Oh my.
When the naive Liu Xun learned of the disaster his foolishness had brought to him, he fled to a man named Huang Zu to ask for assistance, the man who had killed Sun Jian so many years before at Shangyang.
Wow.
Huang Zu's son brought 5,000 extra troops and a fleet of ships down the Yangtze to support Liu Xun, but the allies were defeated anyway. 2,000 men were captured by Sun Ce's army and many ships along with them.
I mean, it does seem somewhat fitting that Sun Ce took over the territory of his former patron. With how quickly his territory was growing, I feel like you could sort of imagine this was eventually going to happen, but this only bolsters his power even more. I mean, he's really risen. I mean, I don't really know the dynamics of this era, but I imagine he's risen to be quite a powerful warlord at this point. That's at least what it looks like on the map, and that's what, you know, it appears to be like, judging from the diplomacy and the warfare that's been occurring.
After this second humiliating defeat, Liu Xun fled north to the court of Cao Cao, while Sun Ce assaulted Huang Zu's own headquarters at Shaxian.
Wow.
Proclaiming that he would gain justice for his father's death, Sun Ce proceeded to win a great victory in the last month of 199.
Another victory?
When knowledge of this reached Cao Cao via a letter sent by Sun Ce himself, he was reported to have said, "That wolf cub. It will be difficult to deal with him."
Whoa, Cao Cao's getting worried.
Though he gained victory over all of these enemies in the west, Sun Ce could not go any further up the Yangtze. He then retreated back to the area of Pengli Lake in order to ease the stresses of supply and communication. Pivoting south, Sun Ce now prepared to invade Yuzhang and Luling. Not much detail of these campaigns survive, however Yuzhang was annexed. As he departed home in the late...
Hell, I mean, Sun Ce has really moved in many directions at this point, but the territory of Cao Cao still stands strong to the north of him, and Cao Cao seems like a seriously formidable foe that Sun Ce hasn't really messed with yet. They've had interactions, Cao Cao tried to screw him over, didn't work. They have not yet entered into full-on conflict. I don't know if they will, but I'm just saying at this point we have these sort of two powerful warlords, right next to each other. And Sun Ce is clearing out a lot of his other competitors in the region.
Spring of 200 AD, Sun Ce had risen from obscurity to command the most powerful army in southern China, and perhaps one of the most powerful in the empire.
Seems like it.
These developments were also a relief to Sun Ce, as the White Tiger Yan once again rebelled in his home province of Wu, encouraged by Xu Gong, the former governor of Wu Commandery, who had escaped to the White Tiger Yan.
Wow.
Xu Gong was quickly captured and strangled to death, while his followers were scattered to the countryside. As Sun Ce was a good horseman and hunter, he often outsped many of his entourage when he was searching for his scattered foes. During one of these expeditions,
that is dangerous for a leader of that stature. You usually want to stay with your entourage.
Sun Ce became separated from his friends. Unfortunately, it was at this moment that he encountered 3 of Xu Gong's former soldiers, who loosed 3 arrows at him. 2 of them missed their mark, but the last struck him in the jaw. Sun Ce was brought back to camp with this serious wound, and was incredibly upset about it, despite the doctor's promise that he would be fine if he rested and stayed quiet.
I mean, I'd be pretty upset too. An arrow through the jaw? That sounds pretty upsetting, to be fair. Though, you know, I get it. You're a great horseman. I'm sure that was, you know, a great quality of his, but maybe hold back a little bit. Stay alongside the rest of your men. I don't know.
As the wound was on his mouth. That night, the 5th of May, 200 AD, Sun Ce's wounds broke open and he passed away.
I didn't see that coming, I'm gonna be honest. I actually thought he'd make it through. Okay, my goodness, we had this whole video on Sun Ce. What an impressive fellow, and as quickly as he came, he is gone. He really did a lot in a relatively short period of time, my goodness.
He was 25 years old.
Right, yeah, so young. He started young, and then he didn't have much time. Wow, that's remarkable.
And his conquests had laid the foundation for the second of the 3 kingdoms, Eastern Wu.
Wow, interesting.
Our series on the conflicts of the 3 kingdoms will continue, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button.
Alright. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't expect him to die at the end. I thought he would pull through. Such an important character, got so much done in such little time. The second of the 3 kingdoms, you can see why. I mean, he really rose from, you know, a subordinate of another of these warlords to rule one of, well, the most powerful kingdoms of the era. One of the most powerful warlords of his time. Yeah, truly remarkable. Kind of shocked by the ending, frankly. I guess moving forward, we won't have any more Sun Ce. Well, there you go. This episode was basically fully focused on him. We got to see his life, his accomplishments, and they were certainly impressive. All right, I enjoyed this one a lot. I always like to learn about things that I know nothing about. I hope you guys do as well. Thank you to all the patrons and channel members, particularly those who are recommending videos. Thank you very much. If you're watching on YouTube, I don't know what the time differential will be for when this goes up exclusively and then when it goes up publicly, but if you would like to have seen this video or other videos like this early and other exclusive content, then you can either check out the Patreon, which is linked down below, or you can become a channel member, which you can also find down below. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, I hope you guys are having a good day today, and I will see you all again next time. Goodbye.